we run these monthly events, and they are just a great session, really. I always say, it's supposed to be informative. It's just about sharing your ideas, everyone just getting together. We talked about obviously different sort of walks of life and everything like that. And so the main focus really today is obviously talk about content strategy. But I suppose just before we do that, I should introduce myself. I work with Jan, obviously at Emissio. My responsibility on a day-to-day is actually talking to business leaders, influencers in the industry, to work with them and to provide, should we say, information to evidence basically where they need to go. Sometimes, we've got a recent opportunity at the moment talking about uses technology. How do they use technology for language delivery? So I go out, do some research, bring that back in, share it, and then to build that wealth of knowledge within inside the community. And then that's the key thing. So my hat today will be the business enabler basically for the communities. And really to kick it off, I suppose, in some respects, I was actually on the telly today, actually, and there was an article with Elton John. So stay with me where this is actually going. But obviously, he's doing Glastonbury very shortly. And the critical thing for him was that, he's done everything. And obviously, I think now he's just looking to the Glastonbury will obviously be one of his last venues. But he was saying, historically he had a vinyl music collection and everything like that. And, he got rid of it. He'd moved on and everything like that. But he's sort of saying that really, what he does, it was the romance basically of vinyl. He could touch it, he could feel it. He knew what it was about from him being in the music industry. And I quite often see it also in the training industry, is that, Paul, I know everything what I do. I'm the subject matter expert. I deliver classroom-based training. I know it, I can feel it. And then, there's a romance with that. But what I get involved with is then working with that romance, working with the emotion, but then to perhaps look at different ways of moving that business into different directions in parallel with what they do, but perhaps to look at new horizons for them as well. And that's really when I talk very much about like a learning enhancement proposition or a solution for them as well. So that's where I get involved. That's why I get quite excited. And that's why I'm quite excited today, really, when we're talking about content strategy. So everyone I see, I'm not looking at Elton John and all these screens, but I'm sure that there's something that you relate to in what you do on a day-to-day business. And it's then, how do I take that bit forward and then perhaps get into new markets, speak to new people, but really you still come back to that romance of, I know what I do, that's my comfort zone. So we really want to talk about how can we help you look at new horizons and perhaps make a new song out of it in some respects. So at that point, a very weird opener. So Jan, do you know any Elton John songs? But if not, I'll let you open up. You're on mute as well. So that's probably the best music tune I've heard because he's on mute. But yeah, please sing away, Jan.
Yeah, no, music is not my thing. When I start using the words, I'll be singing. That's usually a threat. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, though, for a very great introduction there, and indeed not your normal style, Paul. A very nice bridge built. I'm just going to say a couple of words, which are. If all goes well, you should see a screen. Is that correct? A PowerPoint screen.
We can indeed, yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
good.
Okay. So I just wanted to give a very quick overview what Emissio actually is, because we found that too many people say after our webinars, well, what do you guys actually do? So Emissio enables training providers to go blended or to build personalized training experiences, learning experiences, social learning, immersive learning, or mobile learning everywhere, and of course the data that goes with that. So all these kind of things we actually do. So that's where we're coming from. With regards to other elements of what we're doing, or how do we do that? Basically through 3 elements. We have platforms, we have content, whether that is existing content or bespoke content that we make for you or with you, and the number of services that enable you to implement that or to make it work. That's the best definition I have. On top of that, we do a number of research projects because we like an evidence-based approach. And that research we do not ourselves, we do that together with universities. Right now, we're actually doing a project with the University of Oxford, which we started last year, and now we're doing part 2 of that. That will come out on the 11th of July. That's the next webinar. And we then like sharing that research with the community, which we are doing right now. So that's why these webinars are there. That's all I have to say. I'd like to introduce Moira. Moira, you are joining us today from Newtine. Moira, I'm going to ask you 2 questions. The first one is, what does Newtine do? And my second question would be, what are you doing within Newtine?
Good questions. Hello to everybody. So I work with a company called Newtine Consultancy and Training, and we are very much specialist in the data and analytics world. So we put consultants out, but a big part of what we do is we train and we grow new data analysts and data engineers. So a big part of what we do is we train. We provide training to corporate organizations, but we also run an academy program that takes graduates with mathematical and statistical background, and we train them up on the tools and techniques to get into and start their career in data and analytics. So yeah, we're very proud of what we do. We're quite small. We compete with the big corporate bodies, big corporate training companies. But what we're proud of is that in and around the big Glastonburys, the big festivals, the big events, that actually the small specialists can still have quite a strong voice. Did you like that link in there, Paul? Now I might even throw a wee bit more in around that.
Can I just interrupt your flow? Exactly what Elton said. Do I want to go and see the big boys, or do I actually want to go and look at what's actually happening in the other tents? My apologies, we're talking about music here today, but it's trying to make the story really relevant.
Yeah,
we play off each other, so
we play off each other. So we are based in Scotland. However, we had aspirations to grow bigger and be wider reaching. So I joined Newtine and I was asked to set up a project office, a program office, on which we looked at where we were spending our time, our money and our effort, and to make sure that we were focusing on delivering the key things that were important around the landscape. So to continue to be flexible and to continue to look for opportunities, but not to keep piling on and trying to be expert in everything, but keep reminding ourselves, are we working on the right things? So I sit at a project management office as the program manager, and part of the deliverable I was tasked with is delivering a new way of delivering training. And at the time, we thought it was all to do with just getting a learning platform. I use the words of my boss. All you need to do is to take your existing training and put it onto a digital platform. That hasn't been my experience to date. And I would like to share with you some of our experiences of remaining relevant in an ever-changing landscape where our consumers are expecting to consume information and learning differently, but they still want the quality and they want the support that sometimes a smaller organisation, or you have to be mindful if you're a bigger organisation, that you have a personality and a voice.
Oh, I love that. I love the personality part as well, because that's a big danger, isn't it? If you go online, how do you still make sure that your character, your personality, your tone of voice, all these kind of terms are relevant, that still shines through? Yeah. How do you do that, by the way?
So, as I say, our first rush to get to the online market, the online learning market was, we had thought all we needed to do was to package up our training material and to put it into PDF content and run it off of a learning management system. What we quickly found was there was no personality there. And even though we went into a first iteration of taking our, what was traditional PowerPoint presentations and creating an e-module around that, that actually it was still quite flat. And we had a robotic voice to begin with, and we knew that we weren't hitting the mark on that one. So we learned through our first iteration that we lost a bit of our personality, and that if we were going to keep our brand and our relationships going, and what is our value, which is about working with people, then our digital platform and our digital blended learning had to have a personality. So we actually then, we selected a voiceover artist, and we had an interesting experience choosing from a range of actors with a tone of voice, with an accent, and we went through a round of iterations of trying out what a voice sounded like, and we landed on what we now call our Newtown voice. But to go down that road, certainly for our organisation, incurs additional costs because we don't have a production suite that maybe some of the larger organisations had. Working with a voiceover company comes with an additional cost. So again, what we learned is that when we're developing new content or new e-learning material, that we develop it with the robotic voice, and we only incur the cost right at the very end after we've done a beta test of the actual course itself. Because what you don't want to do is to incur additional charges by changing your mind on what the story is, or if you have got feedback from a range of beta test learners that something hasn't quite landed with them from a learning point of view. So actually we do all of our development in a cycle of the robot voice, so an automated voice, and we only swap that out right at the very end when we're ready to launch. And that was a nugget experience that, again, if we were going to remain in this market, then we had to manage our costs as well. Right. So we chose a tone of voice, we chose a voiceover artist, and then we worked on what the brand, so what is the look and feel of our material, what's our colour palette, what is complementary colours, both from accessibility, but say something about us as a supportive organisation. So we developed a brand asset list and a colour palette, of which all of our assets are built off of.
Okay, all right. That's a whole different angle on content strategy, as I'll be honest, as I had in mind when we started this. But that's the nice thing about these webinars. We can go in all kinds of directions. Paul, I see you unmuted yourself.
Yeah, but I'm just reiterating some of the points that Moira was talking about, but also, you know, when we talk about content strategy, it's also like some of the points you were talking about, the relevancy of it as well, and it's where you're starting. So I know some of the people that attended today, they're just starting out, and it's sort of like, if I'm just starting out, what would you say, Moira, would be the one thing that they should perhaps as priority think about in their business? And appreciate all the things that we've been talking about, the tone of voice and everything like that, but if there's one thing that you would, in your experience, and I talked about your historical knowledge and experience when I was talking about you on LinkedIn, but I just wondered if perhaps you could share perhaps some tips and hints basically around that. If I were just starting out today, what would you do differently?
So I always work, and maybe it's a throwback to working in a program office from a development background. Mm-hmm. I work under, or we work under, a development framework. So we work through 5 gateways, if you like. So the big and the first gateway is decide. Decide what you're going to develop, what you're going to create. Create your story. Write the story first. Don't rush to go straight into development. Know what it is you're trying to storyboard out. So I call it the decide stage. Decide and define. Decide what you're going to do first in the form of what you're going to develop first, what course you're going to develop. then define the story, decide what the story is going to be all about, and be very, very clear about what the module or the course has to deliver in the form of learning outcomes. That happens way before you actually hit a development of anything, because if you've not got your story right and you're not clear of what the objectives and the learning outcomes are on any course or any module that you're developing, then you're going to hemorrhage time and money. And I think that is one thing that I would flag out up right from the very start. You can start the process of creating something before actually going into a development cycle to do with content, actually creating content at that stage. So that was the first thing that we learned. We went straight in and started to develop, and we realised that we didn't have a clear story, because sometimes what you say in the classroom is not often the story that is written down on your course materials. And if you're going to bring something to life, then you've got to talk storyboards. And I don't know if any of you have heard that phrase. Apologies if I'm preaching to those that already have, but do not waste your time until you've got your clear story and you've got your clear learning outcomes. When you've got that, then you're ready to start the development life cycle of the content.
Yeah, well, that's should we say, that poetry in motion, what you're just talking about, because in my experiences, some people get very carried away with the latest boy toys. Oh, it's got this, we're going to do that, and we can do all this fantastic video, and they jump straight into the content, and it's like, and then it's sort of like, well, then they feel someone's got to admit, oh, actually, perhaps that wasn't the best thing to do, and then to try and come back and rework it. And we've had situations in the past where, it's like, yeah, we have content, oh, fantastic, and it's their PowerPoint, they just put voice to it, and then they get the feedback and everything like that. Oh, well, that's not learning in the context that I would talk about it.
No, so this is me sharing my learning on the development process.
Yeah, perfect.
And you're absolutely right. If you're not clear about what it is you want the outcome to look like, then you will go through a round of poor quality and actually just a whole load of possible e-learning tools that might not be even relevant or useful for that particular course. Yeah. So get your story right and get your purpose right and that's before you even go into the development of anything.
Yeah.
The other point I would probably share is, yes, the landscape of what you can do now on online and on e-learning, and indeed in the learning environment, there is so many tools out there that actually oftentimes it becomes a bit of a noise, and having a whole load of tools doesn't bring necessarily a whole load of quality. So be clear about what it is that you as an organization or as a course developer are trying to deliver. So we had decided quite early on that our content development and our content delivery would be flexible, in the sense that we were going to build small modules, small courses that could be reused and repackaged in multiple ways, so that we could get value out of what we're doing. Sometimes if you build big, it's very, very difficult to strip out. If you build small, then you can create content components that you can reuse. So we decided that we were going to build small SCORM packages. So we would take what we were good at, which was we had a whole load of material in PowerPoint, but we needed to bring it to life. We started building those small components. Some of them were e-development and brought an e-journey to it, a digital story that was part of our blended learning. We then invited to go quickly to market. We scorned up the rest of our PowerPoints under a standard look and feel, and we invited people to join an online class. And again, using small components. And instead of being a new time actor's voice in an e-learning and digital module, we put our tutor at the front of the class, back at the front of the class, because we wanted the personality to be there and we wanted to establish a relationship. So doing it in small components allowed us to be flexible. It allowed us then to bring in more interaction and flavour, and it allowed us then to assess both formally by using hands-on techniques, hands-on exercises, and just by being able to establish a learner relationship and creating and using the environment to create a forum. So again, we took small components, a mixture of e-learning, a mixture of interaction, a mixture of online classes and events, and we created a blended delivery platform. So it wasn't just about buying tools, it was about understanding what the tools, which tools we wanted to use, and how we wanted to maintain our brand and our delivery quality. And that's been our experience. I hope that didn't go off too much point there, Paul.
No, it's I mean, because I know you and I know the business, but the way that you put it across, I'm really sort of listening and trying to take a few things away from what you're talking about there as well. And I do see, there's such a barrage of stuff that's in our ether in some respects, of AI technologies, chat. I mean, I talk to organizations here as well that are using sort of the AI chat to actually build their content. It's like, well, where's your personality? Because if this is when they say, well, it does 80% of it relatively okay, and the 20% is what I'll put the polish on it. But really, for me, when I look at an organization, when I look at the training experience I go through, I see the identity of that business, and sometimes, it's like, when I've done, obviously I run a membership organization as well, so I go on to an affiliated body of work that they deliver, thinking it's the best because it's the industry standard, and I've been so disappointed with the expectation that it's actually been delivered that I'm not engaged. It's got the brand. You think, well, it's got that brand, it must be good. But I think this goes back to the whole Elton John, the fringe events, those other organizations that really are the bolster of the industry, was where people really need to look at what exceptional work that goes along on the content creation, rather than always looking at the big boys, because they're like an oil tanker, and it takes such a long time for them to change and add new spice, because you talked about flavor, and those sort of things. That's what I really look at when we're trying to differentiate ourselves in the market space. So that's
I think
perfect.
you can, and our experience was, oh gosh, we've got to do something really, really quick here, and it's got to be all shiny and all sparkly, and it's got to be all singing, all dancing, using technology. And to a certain extent, that became overwhelming, because we would never have had the production suite, the money, the costs, the resources that maybe some of the big organizations had. And what we took a bit of a step back and said, what is it, what we are about? And we're about relationship, and we're about people, and we're about using technology to make sure that we can deliver what is our quality and our knowledge in a way that is helpful for the learners. And I think sometimes when you do let's do everything in online and allow technology to do the learning for you, you've no idea if your quality is hitting the mark. You've really no idea if that learner is fast forwarding through your material. And again, it's down to a choice. So we had decided that we would slow ourselves down slightly, and remind ourselves that it's about quality, relationship and people, and about growing our talent. And therefore we grow it from sharing what we know, and we do that in a way that blends technology delivery, our experienced trainers that are now online and are using tools to deliver online, which they would normally have done in the classroom, but they're still delivering their experience, but they're doing it in a different way. So we blend, and we only bring in technology. Interestingly enough, we looked at Synthesia, the kind of moving avatar type, in order to bring personality it was too flat for us.
Mhm.
We looked at AI, and we will continue to look at AI. Our view of AI is absolutely it's valuable.
Yep.
But if you're not doing good checkpoints, then you cannot be 100% sure that what you've got delivered and packaged is hitting the mark across all points, because as we know now, AI becomes a bias AI. So you need to watch how AI is writing your story for you.
Yeah.
That's a good point on the the AI side, because and combined with what you said earlier, Moira, about the number of tools, just on AI tools for trainers, or no, I say it wrongly, for content production, not just for training providers, but also for L&D, I'd say, has exploded. And
Exploded.
I used to use the example, if you're looking for a learning management system, LMS, and you Google it, you probably get 1,000 names on your screen. So you don't see, you don't know anymore what is right for you. But the same story now goes for AI tools. And this is, by the way, in a term of what? Less than a year, 6 months.
Less than a year.
So we're talking about, if you fast forward a year from now, how many tools there will be. We'll come to that point a little bit further in this webinar. That there is an interesting element of the content strategy. It's the process, and I completely understand and recognize what you're saying with, you called it decide, the first part in that process. Think about your story and decide on that. We call it the plan phase, which is if you give somebody a tool, and this is a human thing, give somebody a tool and they start playing with it immediately without planning what they want to do with it. And we've seen this so many times that people, they start using the tool, and then a month later they go like, hey, that's not really the outcome I had in mind, and then they have to start over again. So that planning phase is really important, and then building the content, what you set out to do, and then starting to grow it, and then hopefully even scale it. With regards to the element of your academy, Moira, with you do this specifically for the financial world. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Because that's interesting, because you have a core subject matter expertise in that, and then you decided to add some more to that learning journey and topics. And that's really, I'm curious about how you did that.
Well, we had all the material there, and we had a lot of experienced trainers and consultants that were specialists in the field, and the field that we are predominant in is finance at the moment. And we thought, how do we bridge the gap between becoming an experienced consultant and coming out of university with good knowledge of tools, but not necessarily specialist in data and analytics. And you can come out of having a degree and not necessarily know which field that you want to be in. So what we did was we spoke with our clients first. So the people that have got data teams like risk and audit teams, fraud teams, credit score teams within the big financial organizations. And what they said is it takes a little while for experts to become knowledgeable, but we need them to become experts quicker. And we don't have the time to train them. We had all the training materials, and we had a good relationship with the universities. So what we decided to do was to offer a mutual win-win opportunity in the form of an academy. A graduate would come out and would interview with us, and they might come with all the skills, but they're not specialised in some of the data analytic tools that the financials work in. And they might not be aware of some of the profiling and data mining techniques that is available. So we gave them the opportunity to work with us to skill up for a full year. And we would put those consultants out after a 4-week extensive training program onto the client site. And the client would nurture that relationship in a real life environment with the support of New Time. And at the end of the year, the client had the opportunity to either fully on board as a permanent member of staff, the person that had come through that full year training and mentoring and support, and offboard with us. So we felt we were growing talent and we were expediting real quality experience in the industry a lot quicker than coming through a traditional graduate program or starting small in some organization. So we run up to 4 academy cohorts every year, of which we are growing talent that will develop the new consultants and expertise in data and analytics in the financial industry in the future, but we're molding them right at the beginning in a cohort, again, specialist cohort with subject matter experts to hand.
Okay, and when you did that, did you then, because we talked about core subject matter expertise, for example, Python, and then you added other content to it, such was it communication or presentation, that kind of thing?
So yes, predominantly there's tools and techniques like everything in the data world. There's programming languages and there is data presentation tools that you need to know how to use. But we were also aware that what became a really useful employee or expert in the field was all the supporting tools and skills round about that person. So not just data and IT, it was about people skills, it was about business skills, it was about communication skills. So an academy is about giving them the groundwork on how to go from working or studying in university and go in and present yourself as professionally as possible, making sure that you understand team dynamics, that you understand your own learning techniques and your learning style, understanding others' communication techniques and styles as well. So we were putting in not only a technically competent data analyst in the form of tools, but a grounded professional individual that understood that actually delivering data in its cold form is about working with people and understanding people as much as understanding data and tools. Okay. So that's part of our blended academy approach. It was IT, it was working in tools and programs, it was working on presentation of data to present stories, but it was also about how you present yourself and how you can nurture relationships to work in an effective team.
Yeah, and that is really interesting because we've seen a lot of training providers where you certainly a smaller training provider, and by no means New Time is a very small training provider, absolutely not. However, specifically smaller training providers, quite often they have a subject matter expertise. You're a health and safety specialist, or you're a language training specialist, or whatever, Python, we just talked about. But how do you then grow your business? And this is also part of this content strategy. Actually, I'm going to share a few slides just to present that topic or a bit more the thinking behind it, because this is might actually be interesting for quite a few people as well, where if you look at content strategy, you cannot see it separately from how you grow your business or what your ambition is with your business. So I'm assuming two things here. A, there is ambition. B, there is looking for growth in different ways. And quite often, when you talk about early, more about you have to decide how you grow as a business as well. So I'm not going to elaborate on this very long, don't worry. But on the growth strategy on the left-hand side of your screen, this is an ANSOF, ANSOFF growth matrix. So if you want to Google that, you can find it there. The growth strategy, just very quickly, has a number of ways to go, and I will share some example of that in the next slide. You can also marry this with your training delivery strategy, where a lot of training providers come from a classroom, or since COVID, everybody has delivered on Zoom or Teams or whatever, tools like that. So classroom and virtual ILT. And then a lot of training companies in their scalability are looking for, of course, online and the blend of that. And actually, what I liked earlier, what you said, Moira, was about preserving your personality with the blended approach. That actually goes very nicely. And that's why we see actually blended is very popular in that, instead of just online. So if I go further on that, you will, this is maybe a bit of a busy table, but bear with me. Growth strategy. So you see this matrix here. Now let's, as an example, you're an English language trainer for adult refugees that are already in the UK, just as an example. If you are doing market penetration, which is the first growth strategy, that means that you have the same product that you do, but you're just trying to reach more customers. So language training for refugees, you're just trying to reach more refugees within the UK. The other one, product development, means that you develop your product. And that is actually, Newtime has done a good example of this when you described, we have, for example, data mining tools, but we also do communication tools and how do you present yourself? So that's another product technically, but to the same audience, to the same learner. So that's a good example for that. In my example, what I gave here in the last column, you'll see providing skills training, such as interview skills or sales or other topics. Or companies sometimes also develop in market development, which basically means that you take the product and you look for different markets. You might go international, or you might go further than you've gone before in the same country. That means it could be geographically, but it could also be another segment. The English language training, maybe you now do in business English in language training. Yeah, so a slightly different market, or you look for, as I gave here, for students that are just arriving, different audience in that. And then there's diversification. So in my example here, new product, new customer, you might want to help with visa applications, people that actually haven't arrived in the UK yet, but want to come to the UK. And once they have their visa and arrive in the UK, of course, they fuel your language training again. So it kind of becomes a loop. But those 4 strategies really identify also what kind of content, delivery strategy, and growth you're looking for. So if I take that a step into what does that mean for content? So for example, market penetration is more about cost of delivery. So people are usually looking to scale up, but same product. So what you need is use technology to lower your cost. Product development and market development is really where a lot of different types of content you might be looking at. So if I talked about business English, maybe I need to find another trainer that has a bit more experience in that delivery. So it's not too far from me, but still a little bit of a different skill, and therefore need to bridge that gap a little bit. You can also use other types of content that maybe there is e-learning already that exists there, or you want to create some bespoke e-learning or blended learning that has already been in there. So that's different ways of going to market fairly quickly, and for you as a training provider to grow into different segments or different markets. And with diversification, that's a step further, where maybe you need some services to help with that as well. We've seen that ourselves where we helped some providers with persona building, even pricing. How do you price online learning? That's quite often a question. So there's different elements here that play in content strategy for different training providers. That's all I wanted to highlight there. Actually, we talked. Sorry, I'll do a shameless pitch at the end of this, which is we talked about AI before. We actually seen a lot of questions about that, which is about how AI affects your training business. So we're actually organizing a conference on the 5th of October in London. And we're, well, on the price, we got an early bird at the moment. You can find more information. We will send you information later, right? That's of interest in all. But that's tools, content. How do you do that? Really relates also to your to the way that you grow your business. That's all I wanted to share today. I hope that was of use. Moira, if you look at this and if you fill this in, would you agree that what I said about is the product development, was that the way you're going? And do you also see that as your next step to build that out further, or would you go another way?
In which bit, using AI, Jan, or?
Could be using AI, but more about as content strategy. Are you looking at different tools, or are you looking at different ways to grow the business in that?
Yeah, I think we're always looking for ways to, as you had said, to offer more from the one provider, i.e. Newtown. So the fact that we are able to repackage our material into a specific course that is relevant for specific clients quickly allows us to respond quicker than having a clear view or a clear catalogue. So there's courses that you could go out there and market. I think for us, it's about having each of the content parts, understanding what the business needs in the form of a course, and then packaging the course around those needs. And I think that is where we will continue to reach out. We're looking to take our academy and specialize more on some of the other BI techniques out there. So I think we will be growing our programming content and growing the tools that we use so that we can be richer in some of the technologies out there. We haven't selected which ones we're going to target yet, but I think the fear is because things move so quickly with technology and capability that we see some of the our big programming business analytical tools being increasingly consumed by free tools. And it's interesting what you said earlier on, Jan. Give somebody a tool and tell them to try it, then they think that they very, very quickly become experts. But actually very, very quickly you can fall down a hole and assume you're presenting the right information when in actual fact it's not. You know, so I think we want to use free tools, and we want to encourage industries to use free tools in the same way the AI has a place. I think you need an understanding and a solid governance to using free tools. And I think we want to be part of that conversation, because I do think it's coming. I think free tools, free AI, kind of quick to market. But I do feel that we want to be that expert in the room that says, don't have good checkpoints. If you don't have good governance, if you don't know what good looks like, then actually you just accept what these automatic tools and free tools will produce for you. And
Nice
that's not always right.
Yeah, and that's a nice ending to this webinar. If you just accept what's out there and what the tool gives you, then, and you don't know what good looks like, then yeah, we're going to get this. Actually, somebody else described it as you're going to get this sausage machine, which produces just bland stuff.
Yes.
And that's I like that. Thank you, Paul.
Yeah, and I suppose in some way to that is like, who's in control here? Is it us that actually creating the content, or is it the technology that's driving us? And I know which camp I want to be in. I want to be in that element of, as an individual, as a business, I want to be that creative agent, and the technology will help me do that, but I don't want the technology to lead me to that, because I think you lose your identity. And I think then once you lose your identity, you lose your competitiveness, and you can't differentiate yourself in the market space. And that's why I'm so passionate about content and everything like that, because I think if you haven't got the relevancy, if you haven't got the consistency, which could be in brand, and the fact is of engaging with new tools, then the fact is that, you know, everyone's in a hurry these days. And if you don't get the value right, as you talked about, I think then it's going to be a very hard market space to be playing in. So I will close off to say, Moira and everyone that's on this session today, thank you so much for your contributions.